Hi, and welcome to R&R Living Life. In this episode, Rick and I make our way along the Great Northern Highway through Paynes Find, Woburn and Pathara, where we then take the Northern Pathara Road to Goomalling. From Goomalling, we then head along the Goomalling-Meckering Road to Meckering, all in all around 350 kilometres today. We were moving on by 7:30, with the first section over long straight stretches with long floodways, with water still lying in some spots along the highway after recent rain. The highway had been closed about a week and a half prior to us travelling along it. We stopped in Paynes Find in the Shire of Yalgool, in the Midwest region of Western Australia, a former gold rush settlement with a rich theme of pioneering and prospecting history. We stopped at the family-owned and operated Roadhouse and Tavern with some very interesting signage and very welcoming people. When we were there was a lot of roadworks happening on the Great Northern Highway at the turn-off into Paynes Find, making it a little difficult to turn into the township. The town was gazetted in 1911, the same year the Paynes Find gold battery was constructed. The town was named after the prospector Thomas Paine, who was first to discover gold in the area and was the first to register a lease for gold mining with the Mines Department. The battery was sold in 1987, but it still operates today, making it the only working gold battery in Western Australia. Many of the original settlements in the area have been in steady decline since gold was first discovered. Today, we take for granted the huge mining operations or huge pastoral leases that are now commonplace, but in those early years of settlement, smaller operations brought many prospectors, pastoralists and associated workers to the area. Sadly, those early settlements are now just fragments of what they originally were. This sparsely populated region, with its varied geology, and not to mention the climate, as the mornings were getting a little cooler the further south we were travelling, was fascinating the more kilometres we travelled. The country along the roadside was continuing to change, as in places it was covered in thick scrubs and then rocky ridges, while in the distance was a range of hills, making for some interesting scenery. From Paynes Find we were entering the Shire of Dwallinyu, that covers an area of 7,236 square kilometres. The economy of the Shire depends primarily on agriculture and related services, alongside a thriving plastics and concrete manufacturing sector. Local farming includes the production of cereal crops, wheat, canola, lupin and oats, and livestock, primarily sheep. Wildflower tourism is a growing area of the economy, but we were not to see the wildflowers as we were travelling out of season. We passed the sign to Culmina, established in 1929 and had become a major centre for grain production. It is noted as one of the most productive farming towns per capita in the state. We then passed the Jibberding Nature Reserve, covering an area of approximately 332 hectares, located on the edge of Lake Gourley, an irregular-shaped basin about 20 kilometres in length. The lake is surrounded by a number of clay pans and smaller saline lakes that are linked to the main lake, with the floor of the lake composed of gypsum, and where some travellers were bogged in a small pull-off area. Woburn and Dalwallinu are small agricultural towns, full of wheat belt farming history and unique natural landscapes. Woburn was originally approved as a siting name on the proposed Wongan Hills-Mullawa railway line in April 1913, with land also being set aside and a town site gazetted the same year. On leaving Woburn, we passed sweeping rural views and natural bush landscapes of the wheat belt. We were back into farming cropping country, green everywhere. Following the recent rains, crops planted had begun to shoot, turning the farming land's various shades of green. In each small town was a huge bulk handling and storage facility. Lakes and saline areas dotted the countryside. It was interesting to see in places where saltbush had been planted, as it is a salt-tolerant, deep-rooted plant, that when planted can be an efficient tool in restoring the productivity of saline land, lowering the salt table and reducing the salinity problems. It can be grown on soils considered marginal for crop production and provide nutrients to complement and thereby improve the feed conversion ratio of crops and pasture residues. It is also seen as a valuable source of fodder, often promoted as a drought reserve. Today, we were passing through small rural communities on the eastern edge of the Midwest Gascoyne region and then into the Wheatbelt region. I had trouble keeping track of where we were and which shire or region we were in, as we seemed to pass through quite a few. We passed through the shire of Wongan Balladoo that covers an area of 3,368 square kilometres, with the seat of government at Wongan Hills, as well as the localities of Conduct, Balladoo and Lake Neenan. The next small community we passed was Pathara, with an interesting piece of Olympic history, where Shirley Strickland, née Delahunty, attended her primary school years at East Pathara School, located 18 kilometres east of Pathara, and the historic Bank of New South Wales building. Then on past Damboring Lake between Pathara and Balladoo. The lake, when full, covers an area of around 290 hectares, surrounded by hilly farming country. Balladoo is a small town nestled in the heart of the wheat belt. It boasts an active art scene highlighted by the bikes on display at the turnoff on the highway. Along with Wongan Hills and a few other small towns such as Caddocks and Bindi make up the shire of Wongan Balladoo. The town site was gazetted in 1914 with street names of the original settlers. Like many towns in the area, it relies upon agriculture, mainly wheat production, but sadly, due to the increase in automation of agriculture and the surrounding holdings' increase in size, the population of these small towns are in steady decline. The next small town we passed was Conduct, also a receival site for cooperative bulk handling of wheat and other cereal crops. The first European to visit and chart the area was the surveyor C. Crossland in 1884. The town was originally a railway siding that was constructed in 1913 and the town gazetted in 1917. We made our way on to Wongan Hills, named for a nearby range of flat-topped hills that are found on the northwest of the town, which were first recorded in 1836 by Surveyor General of Western Australia, John Septimus Roe. The hills are the largest single area of natural vegetation remaining in the northern wheat belt, with an extremely diverse range of vegetation, with more than 1,400 species of flowering plants. 24 species are unique to the Wongan Hills. The first settlers arrived in 1905 with the first commercial wheat crop grown the following year. The first store was opened in the town in 1909 and the railway arrived in 1911, the same year the town site was officially proclaimed. The town is the centre of a prosperous grain, sheep and pig farming district, and with numerous small industries connected with the grain, which is grown and harvested in the district. We passed all the machinery dealerships along the main street. Rick and I are not crop farmers, but I am sure there were every brand on display. On leaving Wongan Hills, we passed the research facility, an agricultural research station established in 1925, which assists in the diversification of and improvements in farm practices throughout the state. With around 400 hectares of paddocks for field experiments, averaging around 25 experiments per year on research and demonstration. The research building is also designed to receive, store and process plant material and grain samples collected from research trials distributed across all grain growing regions in Western Australia. The next shire we were to enter was the Shire of Goomalling, covering an area of 2,836 square kilometres, and its seat of government is the town of Kirkalock, surrounded by farms of wheat and other cereal crops, with the town a receival site for cooperative bulk handling. Explorers Hillman and Lefroy in 1846 noted that it was a rich, grassy country, and subsequently squatters moved into the area, with George Slater I establishing a property around the Gmorling Spring in the early 1850s. We passed Conongoring, a grain retrieval point, gazetted in 1897. We then stopped to check out Gabby Koi Koi Lookout for lunch, with spectacular views of the farming land. Gabby Koi Koi is an area covering 20,784 hectares, and where there is a catchment group consisting of farming families working together across farm boundaries to improve the landscape, including native revegetation and strategies for saline river flats, management of remnant native vegetation, sand plain seeps, tree variety trials, and saltbush establishment. The Gabby Koi Koi Lookout is a great place to see the hundreds and thousands of trees that have been planted by these families to improve the environment, increase biodiversity, and help farm profits through improved sustainability. As we returned to the highway, we passed two churches and a massive grain storage area, followed by a windy road as we made our way to Meckering. Situated on the Great Eastern Highway, Meckering is a historic farming town with a fascinating story to tell. Meckering itself has been an agricultural farming town since settlement in 1887, but this quiet rural township was changed forever on the 14th of October 1968 when it was completely destroyed by an earthquake. At 10:59 a.m., the fate and the future of the town changed dramatically when in only 40 seconds Western Australia's most significant earthquake devastated the town. Registering 6.9 on the Richter scale, the quake's epicentre was almost directly below Meckering and caused a stretch of ground more than 40 kilometres long to rupture. It was so strong that residents in Albany, Esperance and Perth reported damage. The quake destroyed more than 50 homes and businesses, injured 17 people, but amazingly, no one was killed. The Mundaring to Kalgoorlie pipeline was severely damaged. Rick and I saw a section that had been preserved near the gazebo in Gabberty Place. Even today, there is still a 1 kilometre stretch of the fault line visible, 12 kilometres south of the town on the York to Meckering Road. Originally known as Bering, the name Meckering was chosen by explorer John Forrest, with the official declaration of the town site taking place in February 1887, but it was not until April 1889 that the surrounding land was declared an agricultural area. Rick and I enjoyed the interpretation panels on the impact of the earthquake, plus a telescoped piece of the Perth to Kalgoorlie pipeline on display in the park. After spending the afternoon wandering around Meckering, we made our way back to Gidget to watch the sun set over the highway. The next morning we left Meckering early and headed east along the Great Eastern Highway. The morning drive was quite interesting due to the fog and driving into the sun. We passed through the small wheatbelt town of Cudderden. The first European to explore the area was Charles Hunt, who reached the district in 1864 and returned in 1865 to blaze a track connecting a series of waterholes, which became known as the Old Goldfields Road. Cudderden's main claim is that the Great Water Pipeline from Mundaring to Kalgoorlie passes through the town, and the old No. 3 pump station, now run by the National Trust, has been turned into an impressive museum. By 1905, the No. 2 rabbit-proof fence, an attempt to control the plague of rabbits, had been built from Port Anne on the south coast to Cudderden, a distance of 1,164 kilometres. In 1906, the town of Culloden was officially gazetted, and during World War II, Culloden was used as a training area for pilots. Culloden Airfield lies to the north of the town and was constructed early in World War II as an elementary training school for pilots for the Empire Air Training Scheme. The facility comprised a large airfield, hangars and technical huts, together with a main base camp further to the east. Towards the end of the war, after sufficient pilots had been trained for both European Air Training Scheme and the RAAF requirements in the Southwest Pacific, the airfield was used as an operational base for heavy bombers in connection with the campaign against the Japanese-occupied Netherlands East Indies. On leaving Culloden, we passed a fellow pushing a wheelbarrow as a fundraiser, making his way into town. It certainly takes a lot of stamina and dedication to push a wheelbarrow, let alone on a fundraising pursuit. The next small town we passed through was Tamman, another typical wheatbelt town with huge wheat silos constructed in 1960, the first concrete silos built in Australia. A railway line on one side of the road, and the faithful old Tamman Hotel and a few shops on the other side. Unfortunately, we missed the Tamman hydrology model and amphitheatre that features a working model depicting typical wheatbelt landscapes, showing how farming land is being lost to salinity and highlighting some of the solutions to improve productivity of the land. With over 1 million hectares of agricultural land in the southwest of Western Australia that have been severely impacted by dry land salinity, and a further 2.8 to 4.5 million hectares of highly productive soils threatened across the southwest of Western Australia, it is extremely important to find solutions to this problem. We continued east along the highway through Merredin, and because of its unique location at a point where the tracks to the goldfields meet up, with a reliable water supply, has developed into the most substantial town before stopping in Southern Cross. What a day it had been, through so many small wheat farming rural towns and communities. We will leave you for this episode as we watch a spectacular and colourful sunset from the Southern Cross Caravan Park. Join us next time as we explore Southern Cross and make our way further east towards Coolgardie. Give us a thumbs up if you have enjoyed this episode. Take care and stay safe. Cheers for now. Rick and Rosemary. R&R Living Life.